Well, it's my distinct pleasure to have with me today the very distinguished Secretary of State and former head of the CIA under President Trump, Mike Pompeo. He's done a fantastic job with foreign policy, and we're going to talk about what's going on in the Biden administration. And I might also say that the Secretary is going to be given the graduation address to the biggest class in Regent University's history. So it's a pleasure to welcome him to the 700 Club. God bless you.
It's great to be with you. God bless you. It's really good to see you again.
Thank you.
I'm so looking forward to the commencement address.
Oh, yeah.
It'll just be such fun.
Well, the Christian leadership has changed the world. Let me ask you something. What do you see? I mean, the whole world is like trying to take advantage of America. Is China our biggest threat now, do you think?
Yes, I think, look, the biggest threat is always inside the United States. If the republic is to fall, it will happen because we don't defend our own institutions.
Yeah.
But far and away, the largest foreign adversary is the Chinese Communist Party. They are atheists. They are adopting policies that look very much like the communism of the Soviet Union and the Marxist-Leninist ideas. But with 1.4 billion people and a massive military and a significant economy as well. They present, to those of us who are Christian believers and all Americans, they present the most existential threat to the United States that we have seen for decades and decades.
Do you think they're going to make a move on Taiwan?
I pray not. And it will in large turn depend upon how America responds. Do we build out alliances with the Japanese and the South Koreans and the Australians and all the countries of the region? Are we prepared to support the Taiwanese people? Right, this is a Confucian place with democracy flourishing and an economy that is flourishing. If we do that well, President Trump was great. He allowed me to go do a whole lot of work where we provided defensive weapon systems to Taiwan and really empower the Taiwanese to take care of themselves. If we do that well, I think Xi Jinping will have to think twice.
Have we got enough firepower, enough naval force and other to block them or not?
We spent a lot of time and, frankly, a lot of taxpayer money getting ready for just this challenge to make sure that our military was up to the fight. We spent a lot of time countering terrorism these last 20 years. That was appropriate, but we are now facing a superpower, a military of scale, and we need to make sure we have forces and structure in the right places. Chancellor, you'd appreciate this.
Yeah.
When we came into office, the Obama administration had done this thing they called their pivot to Asia. If you talk to our Asian friends, they have no earthly idea what that was.
Yeah.
We actually did. We actually built alliances, put the Pacific Command, now called Indo-PACOM, in the lead in terms of resources. We started to build in the right direction. I hope this administration will do what we did. It should be a bipartisan issue. This shouldn't be about politics.
Absolutely.
I hope they'll continue to build on those central underpinnings of the United States pushing back against the Chinese Communist Party.
What about Russia? You know, Russia didn't have much of anything except a nuclear power, and it looks like Putin is doing everything he can to rattle the sword, especially in Ukraine. I mean, are we going to try to stop him or let him just run loose?
Peace through strength.
That's the answer.
When an administration is viewed as weak, it creates real opportunities for these bad guys around the world. They'll think they can push you around. We demonstrated real resolve and the willingness to take on our adversaries, and that creates deterrence. If you're strong and capable and you demonstrate resolve, then you can stay out of wars. You don't have to fight because adversaries will recognize that you are powerful. You use your diplomatic tools. That's the first line of defense. But diplomacy without leaders who are prepared to actually impose costs on their adversaries, well, they don't have much to negotiate with.
It looks like the same thing with Iran. They are just threatening us in the Straits of Hormuz and these other places, and yet are we able to take them on? I mean, you know, like going back to that joint forces agreement with nuclear weapons. I mean, if they get the nuclear bomb, it'll be a disaster.
Yes, it'll be a disaster for us. It'll certainly be a total disaster for the Jewish people in Israel, and frankly, Christians and Arabs living in Israel, but the Jewish homeland of Israel. Right, the Iranians have demonstrated their genocidal intent with respect to Israel.
Exactly.
And we can never let them get a nuclear weapon. I remember, you'll appreciate this, we had some Iranian Coast Guard cutters come around one of our ships when we were we were first in. President Trump said, okay. If they come close again, take whatever action you need. We communicated that to the Iranians, that this was our policy, and we never had that problem again.
We had it just a few days ago.
And we just had it. They're testing President Biden. They're going to see if he has the same resolve that President Trump had and that our team had. I hope and pray that they do. Because while they're in Vienna negotiating to hand back a whole bunch of money to the Iranians, when the U.S. negotiators are willing to hand over everything, the Iranians are flying over our ships, approaching our cutters, enriching uranium at levels they have never enriched before. And our friends in Israel, frankly, our Arab state Gulf partners as well, who work with security issues, they all see this, and they will be put in an incredibly difficult position.
Well, you know, it's amazing. The Abraham Accords that you guys put together were just an incredible thing. You sort of bypassed the Palestinians. The Palestinians have been saying, oh, no, 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 you can't. And then you just went around them and got a deal. It was fantastic.
The Lord was at work. There's no doubt. 40 years of failed policy where the central premise was if you don't solve this problem between the Palestinians and Israel, then nothing can move forward. We said that's just crazy. And by the way, if we're wrong, so be it. We can't do any worse than y'all did. And so we took a completely different approach and began to build out. It took us almost 4 years to build out the trust and confidence of those Arab leaders and, frankly, of Prime Minister Netanyahu as well. But once we did that, we got this glorious outcome, these Abraham Accords, which will change the nature of how ordinary citizens in the Middle East live for decades to come.
It was absolutely brilliant. Well, now, do you think Saudis are going to come along and will they sign a peace deal with Israel? I think they probably want to, don't they?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. I think the Saudi people want to as well. I think that's always the thing that's most important. But it's harder if the American president isn't strong enough to stand behind and provide support to that. There's no doubt that President Trump, as a leader, enabled those Abraham Accords to come together. It took great leaders in Bahrain, in Emirates, and in Israel, but you needed America. You needed America to be there working and have confidence that the American Secretary of State would assist them in making it all go. I'm not sure that we have that under President Biden today. That may make it more difficult for the Saudis, but I'm confident that this is a one-way ratchet, that this peace will continue to build.
What do you think about Biden? It looks like he's intent on undoing almost everything Trump did.
He's moved pretty fast, trying to undo an awful lot.
It's terrible.
It's unfortunate because I think some of the things that they've undone were just spiteful.
Yeah.
That is, there wasn't a lot of policy consideration, right? The mess that we have at our border today, there's no logic in having undone these things that we built over 4 years. These weren't partisan things. These were just every nation controls its border and what flows across its border, and they chose to sort of pull the pins out of the Jenga puzzle. And of course it now has collapsed on top of them and with an enormous humanitarian crisis. So I regret that. Look, they have different views on some things, so be it, but there's no need to just go undo things for the sake of undoing them.
Well, it looks like that there's a massive thrust to push this country into sort of a socialist morass. What can we do about that? I mean, this massive spending and you know, that speech he gave just wants to put the government into everything, starting with little tiny children. And now I understand they're pushing that 1619 project and these other, they talk about a racist society. What do you think about what they're doing there?
Your question was, what can we do?
What can we do?
So it always starts with prayer.
Yeah.
And then it takes action.
Yeah.
It takes people supporting remarkable organizations that are out there fighting on our behalf on the things that Christian believers hold most dear. It takes political leaders with backbone who are prepared to push back against it. We don't have the numbers today at the federal level, but we do in the states. And we may well again by the next election cycle. And so we need to resist all of these efforts to put the government in every corner of our lives. You would have seen, too, they're proposing legislation. One of them is called the Equality Act.
Yeah.
That poses real risks to organizations like the 700 Club, organizations that simply want to evangelize and speak to their own Christian faith and how we as American citizens should behave in the world. These are dangerous ideas, and our responsibility, each of us, wherever we are, I'm not just a private citizen today, each of us has a responsibility to do everything we can to push back against it, to do so in a way that is faithful to our Savior and mindful of the importance of America, not only to all of us and our children and grandchildren, but to the world as well.
Are you working on behalf of some of these? It looks like a few seats and the Republican can flip the House.
Yeah, I'm working real hard.
Are you really?
So I'm going to be in Pennsylvania next week and then up in Wisconsin. I was out in Nebraska and Texas and Iowa a couple weeks back.
Wow.
Trying to help candidates all across America be successful come 2022.
Have we got enough of them?
I think we do. I think we do. I think we do. But if you're out there and you're listening, you're watching, you're thinking about it, and you are a good conservative, faithful believer, and you think you have a good mission, I'd urge everybody to compete and go make sure we have really talented candidates. We've got to not only win by a couple of seats, want a big enough majority that we never have to risk the same thing happening again.
You know, I've seen the House, but are there possibilities? Is there a possibility of flipping the Senate?
There is. It's 50-50 today.
Yeah.
There are a lot more Republicans that will have challenges this time than Democrats, but I've seen some really talented candidates, and some of them are in hotly contested Republican primaries, but some really good candidates. No, I believe, and I think Senator McConnell believes, I think we can get the majority back. And if we can, the worst excesses of the Biden administration, the things that he really wants to do to structurally undermine the United States, can all be stopped.
Well, I think this voter project he's got, that H.R. 1, is just iniquitous. I mean, it would federalize elections. It would be terrible.
No state, not the state we're sitting in Virginia, not my home state of Kansas, wants the federal government telling them how to run elections.
Yeah.
It will create the risk to voter integrity is absolutely staggering, and I think there's enough Democrats who see that too. We need to continue to make the case and make the argument, put pressure on them not to let H.R. 1 ever become law.